Everything started when I connected on Tinder with a user called Lily. Although her profile was modest, there was something intriguing about her that drew my interest. I messaged Lily, and as we talked more in depth, she revealed that she was interested in the paranormal. Captivated, I proposed that we have a casual coffee date to find out more about her obsession with the unknown. Everything went smoothly at our first encounter, and Lily had a genuine enthusiasm for the paranormal. I was intrigued by her talk of old customs and midnight rites. As the evening wore on, Lily extended an invitation for me to join her for an unforgettable midnight ritual in an abandoned church outside of town. Normally, I would have written off Lily's request as a strange dating concept, but there was something about her confidence that convinced me to accept. I had no idea that this choice would set off a series of unexplainable events and paranormal activities. When the customary night finally arrived, I was standing in front of the ancient chapel, its walls screaming mysteries from a bygone past. As Lily met me, the suspense in the air was palpable, her eyes mirroring the moonlight overhead. She took me inside, where the odor of musty old wood filled the air. The interior of the chapel was eerily beautiful, with faded murals and broken stained glass that alluded to a supernatural past, with an enigmatic sparkle in her eyes. Lily described how the ceremony would connect us to the energies of the paranormal, enabling us to speak with beings on the other side of the veil. Lily started the ceremony as we got to the chapel's middle, her chanting resonating through the empty room. A strange, ethereal energy began to charge the air, sending shivers down my spine. A strange atmosphere that made it difficult to distinguish between the supernatural and the real world was created by the flickering lighting casting unsettling shadows on the chapel's walls. The temperature fell during the ceremony, as a chilly breeze blew through the chapel. Unfathomable energy filled the air, and the flickering candles appeared to be dancing in reaction to forces outside of our perception. The nighttime ritual was coming to an end, and Lily's chanting became more intense. There was a noticeable sense of tension in the air. A deep, rumbling noise echoed around the chapel. The shadows appeared to combine, assuming ominous shapes that seemed to have a life of their own. A spooky presence swamped my senses, and I started to feel uneasy in the pit of my stomach. Despite the foreboding mood, Lily insisted that I concentrate on the ceremony and welcome the unknown. I reluctantly followed her direction, but the discomfort remained and grew stronger by the second. Dark energy that appeared to thrive on our presence filled the air as the ritual went on. I could just make out silhouettes moving on the edge of my eyesight in the low light. The chapel reverberated with incomprehensible whispers that had a hint of hatred. The chapel's once haunting beauty seemed more like a warped stage, with unseen forces observing our every move. The stifling tension subsided as Lily wrapped up the ceremony, and the shadows moved away. The strange silence that had previously pervaded the chapel had returned. With her eyes bright with delight, Lily declared that we had made contact with the hereafter. I couldn't get rid of the disturbing experience, but I also felt like something had changed in the chapel. The spirits we had called upon seemed to be watching us from the shadows, seeing everything we did, unfazed. Lily advised we head off before the otherworldly powers become more obvious. There was an odd uneasiness in the air as we ventured out into the cool night. The barren terrain was bathed in an ethereal hue as the moon hung low. Lily emphasized that the things we had called upon might follow us, and that the chapel's connection to the otherworldly was not simply broken. Her demeanor had become serious. At first dismissive, I found myself looking over my shoulder on the return trip back into the city. The silence that surrounded us was disconcerting, and the night seemed to go on forever. Lily's eyes darted uncomfortably at shadows she couldn't see, as though she was also affected by a weight hanging in the air. Days went by, and I started to feel a strange kind of dread. Unusual experiences such as flickering lights, wind whispers, and a constant sense of being watched turned to become a daily struggle. My assumption that something beyond our comprehension had been unlocked by the midnight ritual was confirmed when Lily too shared her experiences with unexplainable events. Lily called me late one evening, her voice urgent. The supernatural powers we had called upon were turning more and more evil, she said. Her surroundings started to exhibit strange symbols, and she talked of an increasing feeling of fear that seemed to come from the shadows. Lily and I were determined to solve the enigma, so we made the decision to consult an occult expert. Dr. Hastings, the expert, was a seasoned practitioner who carefully listened to our account. His face darkened as we talked about the midnight ceremony and the after effects that followed and tormented us. As Dr. Hastings clarified, some rituals could really invite beings that exist outside of our reality by creating portals to other dimensions. It's possible that the evil we encountered sprang from unsettling energies that were aroused during the ceremony. The sigils Lily described were those of ancient entities, and their existence suggested a connection between the paranormal and our reality. Dr. Hastings suggested a purification procedure, which is a risky and delicate task, to break this connection. As part of the ceremony, we had to go back to the church with certain objects and spells to drive out the evil spirits that lurked there. We reluctantly consented, understanding that facing the paranormal forces head-on was our last hope of removing the encroaching gloom. On a moonlit night, Lily, Dr. Hastings, and I returned to the chapel armed with old books, lucky charms, and our resolve. An aura of dread enveloped the room as we entered the sacred area. Once a symbol of mysticism, the church now seemed to be a battlefield between the forces of light and shadow. Dr. Hastings led incantations that reverberated throughout the empty room as she started the cleansing ceremony. An unearthly energy began to charge the air, and the shadows appeared to writhe in response to the incantations. Symbols flickered menacingly on the chapel walls, and an odd frequency of hum permeated the air. With our senses sharpened, Lily and I sensed the evil forces pulling away from the barrier that Dr. Hastings was building. A loud roar erupted across the chapel as the ceremony reached its peak. Now fully released, the evil forces took on twisted shapes that were impossible to describe. Their evil spread through the air, and the formerly sacred area was turned into a battleground for otherworldly forces. With unyielding determination, Dr. Hastings proceeded with the incantations, each syllable acting as a barrier against the approaching darkness. Shielding amulets in our hands, Lily and I stood on the edge of the otherworldly whirlwind, our hearts racing in response to the forces colliding in front of us. The evil spirits vanished in an intense burst of light. The chapel, which had been a scene of intense fighting, fell silent again. "We have gotten rid of the evil spirits from the chapel," Dr. Hastings, exhausted from the effort, stated. "On the connection between the otherworldly and our reality has been broken." We felt a wave of relief pass over us, yet the discomfort persisted. Dr. Hastings cautioned that our midnight practice might have long-term effects on our lives and that the paranormal world followed its own enigmatic rules. After leaving the chapel, Lily and I were both profoundly impacted by the experience and were troubled by the shadows that continued to linger in the back of our thoughts. I can't help but wonder how many other Tinder interactions result in mysterious and unsettling events as I tell you this story. Once a medium for communication, the digital world could also open doors to realms beyond our understanding. Therefore, my friends, keep in mind that not every relationship is a simple matchmaking. Some could lead to unexpected places where the distinction between the supernatural and the actual world becomes hazy. Keep an open mind, exercise caution, and be ready for anything, since you never know when the dark side will appear. Typing right on a profile that looked too good to be true was the first step towards the start of everything. Emily immediately drew my attention with her beautiful smile and her love of exploration. Through our communications, we were able to establish a virtual relationship by laughing and telling stories together. I had no idea that this encounter, which seemed normal at first, would turn into a thrilling trip into the paranormal. Our first dates were so much fun, with lots of common interests and developing chemistry. Emily came up with the original plan for our next excursion, touring a deserted theme park outside of the city. We decided to meet at the park one moonlit night, because it sounded like the ideal amount of thrill and excitement, and a shiver went down my spine when I arrived at the deserted theme park. The previously bustling location was now immobile, the rides decaying and the children's joy giving way to a disquieting quiet. My phone rang with Emily's message, directing me to our rendezvous location next to the collapsing roller coaster. As I got closer to the appointed location, the moon was casting long shadows, and there was an aura of dread in the air. Although Emily was nowhere to be seen, her message told me to go ahead, feeling a mixture of curiosity and fear. I ventured further into the deserted park, with nothing but the hollow echo of my footsteps to accompany me in the eerie quiet. A unexpected burst of wind made the rusted swings groan overhead, producing a disconcerting rhythm as I got closer to the Ferris wheel. That's when Emily sent me another message telling me to go inside the rundown funhouse. I hesitantly entered the funhouse, which seemed to mock the idea of fun with its fading colors and fractured mirrors. The only source of light in the funhouse was the dim glow from my phone, and the air was stale. I felt even more lost as I followed Emily's message through a labyrinth of warped hallways and twisted mirrors. At the center of the funhouse, I came upon a small, darkly lighted room just as I was about to challenge the strange directions. There was a life-size porcelain doll in the middle of the room. A thin murmur resounded in the atmosphere as its lifeless eyes gazed into the chasm. The doll's presence sent shivers down my spine. It appeared almost too real. Emily's message told me to talk to the doll and ask it a question that would reportedly reveal a secret. I asked a question, hesitant yet curious, and to my surprise, the doll answered. My spine tingled at the sound of its voice, a menacing mix of purity and evil. The doll told a story of lost souls and a spell that confined them to the dilapidated rides, a forgotten tragedy that had befallen the amusement park. The room's mood got icy, and the faint light flickered as the doll carried on with its horrific story. I felt like I was being watched all of a sudden, and I couldn't get rid of the impression that eyes were watching me closely. When I tried to get out of the funhouse, the once clear road looked to be a never-ending maze that was trapping me in a dark game. As I made my way through the warped hallways, feeling as though the walls were closing in, desperation gnawed at me. The funhouse spat me out into the starry night just when I thought I would be lost forever in the twisting labyrinth. The stuffy interior air was a sharp contrast to the freezing outdoors air. Emily had sent me another message on my phone, inviting me to explore more of the park. I disregarded my better judgment and did as instructed, with the long shadows created by the abandoned rides appearing to have a life of their own. The park had changed from a happy place to be to a terrifying place, where the past clung to the present. A melancholic tune played on an invisible music box as I got closer to the abandoned carousel. The eerie melody chilled my spine, and I recognized that it came from an old-fashioned carousel with worn and shattered horses. Emily sent me a message telling me to ride the carousel into the center of the park. I reluctantly mounted a tired horse as the sound of the machinery clattering around filled the room. The spectral tune began to play as the carousel began to rotate in a rhythmic manner. The dilapidated rides and deserted kiosks merged into a dizzying scene of lost memories. As I made my way around the park, the music abruptly stopped and the carousel stopped. I was alone myself in the quiet of the night when panic struck. Emily's message now told me to face the ghost who haunted the park, the one who cast the curse that kept the lost souls here in this barren land. A figure appeared out of the darkness in the distance. It was a ghostly entity that defied the rules of reality. Its eyes radiated an unearthly intensity, and I heard a voice telling me a heartbreaking story of betrayal and agony. The ghostly figure identified itself as the abandoned amusement park's defender, a restless spirit looking for atonement. The park changed all around me as the story of the spirit developed, the rides and attractions returning to their former splendor. The eerie quiet that had pervaded the park for so long gave way to laughter and happiness. After being imprisoned in a place of hopelessness, the lost souls were freed. The ghost asked me to tell its story in order to lift the centuries-old curse that had kept it inside the theme park. The ghostly figure vanished into the shadows, and the moon's ethereal brightness enveloped the rejuvenated park, causing the atmosphere to alter once more. Disoriented and out of breath, I staggered off the carousel, the decaying rides now serving as symbols of the victory against a sinister force. One final time, Emily's message materialized, thanking you for severing the enchantment that had trapped the lost souls. Something strange and peaceful enveloped me as I left the theme park. The park seemed to be enveloped in a serene aura by the starry night, wiping out any reminder of the paranormal experience that had occurred. As I walked beyond the gates, my phone, which had been a conduit to the unknown, became silent. As the sun dawned the next morning, in a town that was unaware of the unearthly happenings of the previous evening. Now that it was curse-free, the abandoned theme park served as a reminder of how little separates the visible and invisible worlds. Once a sign of hopelessness, the phantom guardian had achieved atonement and left behind a changed scene filled with the soft light of morning. Thinking back on that terrifying evening, I can't help but wonder how many other gullible people have come into contact with the unknown via Tinder's virtual world. The boundaries between the supernatural and the everyday are hazy, and occasionally a single swipe can take us on a trip beyond reality. Thus, keep in mind that the digital world can contain mysteries that defy explanation. The next time you find yourself scrolling through possible matches, not every interaction is what it seems, and something unexpected could be hiding under the surface of an otherwise routine relationship. The boundary between the natural world and the paranormal is a thin line that can be crossed in an instant. So maintain your curiosity, your vigilance, and your readiness for anything unexpected. Everything started when I made the decision to explore the realm of internet dating. After swiping left and right, I came across a profile that drew my attention. Scarlett, a girl whose bio seems to have been tailored specifically for me and who had an infectious grin and dazzling eyes. We agreed to get together for a casual coffee date after exchanging a few messages. As evening fell, I was standing tensely in front of a trendy coffee shop in the middle of the city. I looked up when the door chimed and saw Emily coming in. In person, she was even more intriguing, and our discussion flowed naturally. I had no idea that this seemingly routine interaction would set off a chain of events that would plague me every day of my life. We went on a couple more dates, and every one of them strengthened our bond. Soon after, we made the decision to go all the way and spend a weekend together at a secluded cottage tucked away in the woods. A peaceful getaway that offered an opportunity to get away from the bustle of the city looked ideal. The lush trees that formed a natural canopy over the winding road made for a lovely drive to the cabin. As we made our way farther into the forest, there was a palpable sense of excitement and anticipation. But when we got to the cabin, everything suddenly changed. Surrounded by towering trees that appeared to whisper secrets in the breeze, the solitary building stood ominously alone. I felt a chill go down my spine as soon as we entered. The area was made more eerie by the creaky flooring and low lighting. Though uncomfortable at first, we told ourselves it was only our imaginations playing tricks on us because of the strange environment. Laughter, storytelling, and crackling of the fireplace characterized the first night at the cabin, which was unremarkable. But the following morning, things took a terrible turn. Emily said she heard footsteps outside the cabin during the night, waking me up with a terrified expression in her eyes. I dismissed it as a figment of my imagination, attributing unreasonable anxieties to the isolation. We made the decision to explore the surrounding forests as the day went on, in an attempt to get rid of the eerie atmosphere. At first, the forest appeared serene as sunlight danced across the leaves, forming a dappled pattern on the ground. However, as we descended farther, a stifling quiet descended upon us, and the mood grew more unpleasant. In the middle of the woods, we happened upon an ancient, deserted shack. The worn and fractured wood gave the impression that it had been left undisturbed for many years. Our curiosity overcame us, and we cautiously made our way inside the rundown building. Inside, there was an overpowering smell and a lot of dust. We found a variety of vintage photos strewn all over the floor, among the rotting remains of furniture. They showed people in a range of distressing situations with unfathomable horror in their eyes. We were horrified to learn that these were pictures of guests who had previously been in this very cabin when we looked through the pictures. We frantically looked for more hints in the hopes of solving the location's secret. We discovered a notebook in a secret nook under a decaying floorboard. The notes documented the experiences of the previous occupants, describing unexplained phenomena like as noises in the night, shadows shifting by themselves, and a pervasive sense of being seen. Our sense of dread grew stronger the more we read. We were particularly interested in one entry. It told of a demonic force that materialized online and lured gullible people in using dating applications. The creature trapped people's spirits in a terrifying state of limbo, feeding off their terror. On the connection between our Tinder encounter and the evil spirit that seems to haunt the cabin hit me hard as soon as I heard those words. We were overcome with fear, but we had no choice. Our will to break free of this evil force was strengthened by the knowledge that we were entwined in a dark web of supernatural forces. The mood outside the cabin grew more hostile as night fell. The once welcoming woods turned into a maze of shadows, hiding whatever unknown monsters might have been there. The footsteps echoed through the darkness like a ghoulish symphony, and we heard them again, closer this time. and the creaks and groans of the cabin itself seemed to come to life, creating a melancholic tune that connected with the evil energy all around us. As they flickered and died, our phones, our lone connection to the outside world, betrayed us, leaving us in complete darkness. I made the nervous decision to go straight after the thing. With just the notebook and a torch to guide us through the intense darkness, we made our way through the completely dark cabin. As we made our way to the chamber where the previous occupants had recorded their terrifying encounters, there was an unearthly force in the air. The temperature dropped as soon as we walked in, and there was a low, growling whisper. The spotlight jerked fiercely, throwing strange shadows on the walls that seemed to move in time with the presence of the evil force. On the space itself appeared to contort, changing in size as if we had entered another realm. We saw it in the twilight, an expression of sheer evil. Before us hovered an ethereal creature, its features twisted and twisted, and its eyes, pools of blackness, locked onto ours, and a low, growling voice filled our heads, telling us of the agony it had caused to those who had ventured to cross its path. As the thing got near, fear stopped us, its presence like a fog of smothering fear. We chanted an incantation we discovered in the journal, pleading for defense against the evil power that aimed to devour us in a desperate attempt to escape. The creature let forth a cry that shook the entire fabric of our beings as soon as the spell departed our lips. The chamber shook, and the suffocating darkness started to fade. Gasping for air, we staggered backward as the cabin reverted to its usual state. Even though the evil force had been defeated, its wounds persisted. The formerly warm cabin now served as a reminder of the atrocities we had seen. The entity's lingering effects had soaked into the building's base, permanently altering the formerly tranquil hideaway. We hurriedly packed up our things and left the spooky cabin behind. As we emerged into the chilly night, the woods, devoid of their evil aura, appeared to exhale in relief. The weight of our shared experience hung heavily in the air as we made our solemn trek back to civilization. Emily and I spent the next few weeks trying to piece together the paranormal experience that had occurred in that isolated cottage. The wounds on our spirits acted as a continual reminder of the thin barrier between our reality from the unidentified powers that exist in the shadows. I can't help but wonder how many other people have unintentionally come into contact with the evil force that resides in the digital world as I tell you this story. Once full of opportunities, the world of internet dating now has a murky underbelly that few people are aware of. Thus, keep in mind that not every interaction is what it seems, and the digital world can contain more than simply possible mates. The next time you swipe right, I had the unshakable impression that we had only begun to explore the surface of a sinister power that existed outside both the real world and the virtual one. As we drove away from that haunted cabin, once restricted to the shadows, the spirit had tasted our dread and remained malevolent, waiting for the next innocent victim to cross its path. So, use caution when using internet connections. Beyond the possibility of love, the digital world could also be a doorway to horrifying things that are beyond comprehension. Keep yourself cautious and keep in mind that not every swipe results in a happily ever after. Occasionally, it results in a terrifying meeting with the unknown.